We'll start with the prayers. Please repeat after me. Om Sada Shiva Samarambham
Om Sada Shiva Samarambha
Shankaracharya Madhyamam
Shankaracharya Madhyamam
Asmadacharya Paryantam
Asmadacharya Paryantam
Vande Guru Paramparam
Vande Guru Paramparam
Saraswati Namastubhyam
Saraswati Namastubhyam
Varade Kamarupini
Varade Kamarupini
Vidyarambham Karishyami
Vidyarambham karishyami
Siddhir me sada
Siddhir me sada
Om Sahana Vavatu
Sahana bhavatu
Sahanau Bhunaktu
Sahano bhunaktu
Sah Viryam Karavavahai
Sah Viryam Karavavahai
Tejasvinavaditamastu ma Vitvishavahay
Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahay
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti
Vasudevendra Yogindram
Vasudevendra Yogindram
Tattva Jnanapradam Gurum
Tattva Jnanapradam Gurum
Mumukshunam Hitarthaya
Mumukshunam Hitarthaya
Tattvabodho Bhidhiyate
Tattvabodho bhidhiyate.
Om Namah Shivaya. Okay. I just want to tell something before we start. So when you say this Om Shanti Shanti, this has to be said as Om Shantish Shantish Shantihi. Okay, whenever this Visarga is followed by Sha, it takes on the pronunciation of half Sha. So it becomes Shantish. Okay, part of chanting rule. So it will not be Shanti, Shanti, Shantihi. Okay, it is Shantish, Shantish, Shantihi. Okay, so now what were we doing last class? What topic were we doing?
Sadhana Chatushtayam.
Okay, what is Sadhana Chatushtayam?
The eligibility for
Qualifications.
the fourfold qualification of Viveka, Viragaha, Shat Sampati and Moksha.
Okay, the fourfold qualifications. Fine. Qualifying for what?
For being a good student.
For Jnanam.
For
Qualifying
Jnanam.
for Jnanam.
Eligibility for self-knowledge, for Atma Jnanam. Okay. It's not that if you don't have these things, it will not be taught. It is just that it will not work on you, even if it is taught. That is the idea behind the qualification. Okay. Now, we saw this and yeah, so just now you all said we have four: Viveka, Vairagyam, Shat Sampatti, and Mumukshutvam, right? And Viveka is discrimination between the permanent and the impermanent objects. Viragaha is dispassion or detachment. Shat Sampati is the sixfold disciplines, inner disciplines, and Mumukshutvam is the longing or the desire for moksha. And last time we saw, we saw this. And we also saw this, where the student asks, what is this Vivekaha? And the teacher tells him that having this clarity between what is permanent and what is impermanent, that is called Vivekaha. And unfortunately, we usually end up having the wrong expectation from the wrong source, right? So if you expect permanent happiness from an impermanent source, you are just setting yourself up for disappointment, because the object itself is impermanent. Therefore, it cannot give any kind of permanent happiness. And so the question comes then, what is permanent? And Shastra tells, Nityavastvekam Brahma, there is only one permanent object, and that is Brahman. Okay, and everything else is impermanent, it is Anatma, it is Anityam. Okay. And having this clarity is called Vivekaha. Then we were discussing what is Vairagyam, right? And we said that Vairagyam, even though it translates as dispassion or detachment, it is actually not freedom from the objects themselves. It is freedom from addiction to the sensory pleasures provided by these objects. Okay, it is freedom from emotional slavery to external objects. And we discussed two types of pleasures. We said adharmic and dharmic, that is the moral and immoral, right? The ethical, unethical, the right and wrong. Now, both of these are actually temporary or permanent. Both dharmic and adharmic pleasures are temporary or permanent.
Temporary.
Temporary. So it doesn't matter if it is unethical or if it is ethical. Both are temporary. Why? Because they are not Atma. Only Atma is permanent, remember. Okay, so these two are, both are temporary. However, Shastra recommends to avoid adharmic pleasures totally. Okay, the immoral pleasures are to be totally avoided. And what are they? They are things like stealing, killing, cheating. Okay, that which involves hurting the another person or another being, those come under adharmic. So those are to be totally avoided, as it will hamper the spiritual progress. So what about dharmic kamaha? Can they be totally avoided? No. Shastra says dharmic kama, the moral desires, may be indulged in moderation. The key word is moderation. Okay. Why moderation? Because again, if there is excessive indulgence, there is a risk of getting addicted to it, getting obsessed with it. And then what happens? Again, the whole cycle starts from there. So in moderation. And then the author himself has classified these pleasures into two. He says the present pleasures, ihaloka, and the future pleasures. Now the future could be in this life, or it could be in the next life. It could be in this world, or it could be in another world. Okay, paraloka. So for example, a lot of people used to have the desire for heaven. Okay, some people still do. And there is a desire to go to heaven. And even those kind of future pleasures, there must be vairagyam towards them also. Now, we discussed that vairagyam is a mental state. It is not a physical, detachment from objects. Physically, it is not practical to, totally remove yourself from all objects and say, now I am a vairagi. It becomes difficult, right? So at the physical level, things must go on as they do. But at the mental level, there must be vairagyam, there must be detachment, the willingness to give up the object. And why that preparedness to give up or let go of an object must be there? Because the object is temporary. And so is the body, right? So is your own body. Your body is also temporary, object is also temporary, and either object will drop the body or body will drop the object. But a separation is inevitable, right? And this to prepare for the separation, you have to start early. Start as early as possible, reminding yourself again and again of the limitations of attachment. Okay, so this we discussed. Shankaracharya calls it dosha darshanam, and Krishna also refers to this in Bhagavad Gita. He says, for example, if you are attached to the physical body, right, your own physical body, then remind yourself of Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi, Dukkha. Okay, Janma is birth, Mrityu is death, Jara is disease, Jara is old age, Vyadhi is disease, and Dukkha is pain or sorrow. Okay, Dukkha can be pain at the physical level or at the mental level, right? So constantly remind yourself that the body is associated with all of this. It is associated with old age, with disease, with death. All of these problems are going to happen to the body. Is there anybody who escapes death? Is there anybody who escapes old age and disease? Right? And even if not, to me, it could be to anyone around me. And then there is an indirect kind of pain, right? So all of these things are inevitably associated with the body. They will happen, and they happen to everybody, and there's no avoiding this, right? So when you constantly remind yourself that the body is associated with these things, then you can detach from it. You can develop some distance. There is a willingness to let go when the mind is prepared. That preparation, that willingness to let go, that is called vairagyam. It is a state of internal sannyasa. Okay. Now, this vairagyam, some people get the question that is it a state of emotionlessness? So the answer is no, it is not a state of emotionlessness. Okay. And actually, Vedanta says that a state of emotionlessness is not possible at all. As long as you have a mind, you will have emotions. Right? Only when the mind is not there, then only there can be no emotions. So in coma or in death, only then there are no emotions. So you will always have emotions. Now the question becomes, then how do I have emotions and vairagyam at the same time, right? So those emotions that are vetted by the intellect, those emotions that are run past the intellect and that are certified okay, those emotions you can keep. The other emotions that have a tendency to disturb the mind, that have a tendency to cause turmoil in the mind, those must be removed. Okay, so your intellect must prove stronger than the emotions, and only those emotions that are harmless in nature may be kept. Okay, and same for desires also. Okay, so if you can convert your binding desires into non-binding desires, then you can keep them. Is this clear?
Medha ji,
Yes.
I had a small question. So right now you said that as long as you have mind, you have emotions. And then you said during coma and death, you have no emotions. But most of the times you've seen that when people are in coma, we've seen things like tears rolling down their eyes if people come and talk to them or there's some incidents. So how does that happen?
So in those cases, the mind is still active, only the body is unable to respond. So what I meant was in the absence, like a brain dead kind of situation.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. So, there's a very nice example for Vairagyam. So all these, objects, how should I treat them then? The question comes, right? Like, what do I do with all these objects that give me pleasure? So for this, there's a nice example and given by Swamiji, and he says, look at the world like a cardboard chair. Okay, so imagine a cardboard chair. Now, a cardboard chair looks like a real chair, right? And you can do a lot of things with it. You can, decorate it. You can place it on a pedestal. You can do many things. You can play with it. You can do many things. What is the only thing you should not do with a cardboard chair?
Not
Sit on it.
sit
Do
on
not
it.
sit on it, yeah.
You should not sit on it, okay, right? Because if you sit on it, then you can imagine. I will leave that to you. So, this idea that you should not lean on the chair is there. Why? Because the chair cannot support it. It's the same with the world. Okay. So, the world, you can enjoy it, you can cherish it, you can indulge, you can do everything, but do not emotionally lean on the world. Okay. Do not lean on the world for your emotional support. If you emotionally invest in the world, then it is going to be a problem. Why? Because the world is like that cardboard chair. At some point, that object is going to collapse. It is not going to be there. And then what happens to your emotions which are associated with that object is going to be a problem, right? So this is the idea. Do not lean on the world, but still you can use the world, you can cherish the world, the world is actually an infrastructure provided for your spiritual growth. So you can use it in that sense. Okay, so with this, we have finished Vairagyam also. Any more questions? Okay. So we finished Viveka, we finished Vairagya, and now we come to the third one, which is Shamadhi Shatka Sampatti. And now, our student has asked a question and the teacher has given an answer. We can read this. You can unmute yourself. Shamadhi Sadhana Sampattika
Samadhi
Samadhi sadhana
Shamodamaha
Namo Namaha
Uparatistitiksha
Diksha
Shraddha Samadhanam Cheti.
Shraddha Samadhanam Cheti.
So the third qualification the student is asking, what do you mean by this Shamadhi Shatka Sampatti? Now in some books it will be given sadhana, in some books it is given Shatka Sampatti. Both are okay. So Shatka means 6 and Sampatti means endowment. Okay, like a possession, a wealth. And here, obviously, the wealth we are talking about is inner wealth, right? Inner discipline. And so the student has asked, what is this sixfold disciplines that you are referring to? And they begin with Shama. Shama, Adi. Adi means etc. So Shama, etc. Sixfold disciplines, what are they? That is what the student is asking. So the teacher, he first lists them. He first makes a list and then he explains each one a little bit more. So just the list we will see now. So this is 3A, 3B, like this, okay? So the first one is called Shamaha. Shamaha means mind control. Okay. Then there is Damaha. Damaha means sense organ control. Okay, control of the organs. Then there is Uparati. In some books it might be given Uparama, both are same. So Uparati means quietude or withdrawal of the mind. Then there is the next one, Titiksha. So this word breaks here and it will be Titiksha. Okay. Titiksha means endurance or tolerance. Then there is Shraddha. Shraddha means faith. Then there is Samadhanam. Samadhanam means one-pointedness of the mind or concentration. Then there is Cha, which means and. Iti means this is it. This in this manner. This is the list. Right? So Shama, mental control. Dhamma, sense organ control. Uparama, which is the quietude or withdrawal of the mind. Titiksha, endurance or forbearance. Shraddha, faith. Samadhanam, concentration or one-pointedness. Now we're going to see each of these in some detail. Obviously the student also has questions because these words are new to him also. So he starts asking. And this we'll read. Shamakaha,
Shamakaha,
Mano Nigrahaha.
Mano
Nigraha.
So the student has asked the question, what is Shama? And the teacher has answered, Mano Nigraha. Mano means mind and Nigraha means to control. Okay, mind control. In other words, mental restraint. Okay. Now, so those of you who have done TTC, you should be knowing there's a very famous quote by Swami Vishnu Devananda. He says, health is wealth. What is the rest of it? Health is wealth.
Peace of mind is happiness. Yoga shows the way.
Peace of mind is happiness and yoga shows the way. So let's focus on the second line of that, which is peace of mind is happiness, he says. If you analyze, you will see that actually peace of mind is required to be happy. Is it possible for an anxious person to be happy? Can you be simultaneously anxious and happy? It's not possible. So peace is definitely necessary to be happy. So this peace of mind becomes a very important thing. And that is what Shama is. Shama basically literally means peace of mind or a poised mind. Okay, a stable kind of mind. Okay, so it is, the word literally means Shanti. Shanti means peace, right? And this is mental peace. Now, it's very important, right, to have that stress-free mind. So when he says Mano Nigraha, he does not mean control of the mind in that sense. What he means is thought discipline, okay, disciplining the thoughts or very good stress management, right? An anxious mind is basically a stressed mind. And so the opposite is stress management, having very good stress management. The mind is a very sophisticated tool that is given to us. It is a very sophisticated instrument for us, right? And if it becomes a burden to even carry, then how can you use it, right? So there's a famous Sanskrit line that says ashantasya manobharaha. It means a mind that is not peaceful is a burden. And such a heavy mind becomes very difficult to deal with, to live with, and to use for any productive activity, right? For example, if you have a weapon, say a sword, and if the sword is too heavy for you to even lift, how can you expect to use it as a weapon, right? So it's the same with the mind. If the mind is light, if the mind is calm, then it becomes a more sophisticated instrument, a more efficient instrument for you to use. If it is a burden, then it hampers all your activities, right? So this is mano nigraha, or disciplining the thoughts. Now, one of the very effective methods in today's world to manage the mind is Hatha Yoga practices, right? So those of you who are regular yoga practitioners, you will be knowing that asana and pranayama practice have a direct impact on the mind, right? As soon as you finish your practice, there is a great sense of peace, a sense of lightness, positivity, right? It may be temporary in nature, but as you go on practicing, and as you become a long-term practitioner, what happens? The time periods of peace increase, and then the stressful periods go on decreasing over time, right? So the period when you are peaceful goes on increasing in time. So this Hatha Yoga practice is one of the best ways to develop Shamaha, and in fact develop many of the sadhana chatushtayams. Okay. Now the question may come, why is this Shama needed? Right? It's a fairly, obvious answer, because I want to be happy. But still, let's see. Why do you need Shama? Is it so necessary? The first point, the first reason why you need it is for your physical health. Now, we have heard the term psychosomatic diseases. So these are diseases that originate due to stress in the mind, like hypertension, asthma, many stomach related, digestive related ailments like acidity, ulcers. Many of these things these days are being traced back to stress in the mind. And it is kind of, well known now that a stressed mind leads to an unhealthy body. And if there is an unhealthy body, how can there be spiritual progress, right? So even to maintain physical health, this shamaha, this peace of mind becomes very important. Next is for your own mental health, for the emotional health of the mind. So if too much stress happens, what happens? It leads to psychiatric problems, right? There is depression, there is nervous breakdown, suicide, so many things go wrong. Why? Because the mind is unable to bear its own weight, right? So even to manage your emotional health, shamaha becomes very important. Then there is intellectual health. Now there's a difference between emotional health and the intellectual health. So this is like the virus situation. So we discussed this previously once, that the emotions, or very strong emotions, are like a virus. So if you just imagine your computer virus. So when it attacks the computer, all of your data becomes inaccessible. It might still be there, but you are not able to access it anymore. In the same way, when emotions hijack the mind, they become like a virus. All your knowledge, all your information may still be there, but you are unable to access it. And in Bhagavad Gita, second chapter, there's a very beautiful, very important verse given by Krishna that talks about the pathology of this intellectual health getting destroyed. The progression from strong turbulent emotions to the destruction of the intellect. So some of you may have done this already. He says, ध्यायतो विषयान् पुंसः सङ्गस्तेषुपजायते सङ्गात् सञ्जायते कामः कामात् क्रोधोऽभिजायते क्रोधात् भवति सम्मोहः सम्मोहात् स्मृतिविभ्रमः स्मृतिभ्रंशात् बुद्धिनाशः बुद्धिनाशात् प्रणश्यति. So what it means is that when you dwell on an object, what happens? There is a attachment formed to that object, or rather there's an attachment formed to the idea of having that object, possessing that object. And once that attachment is formed, the next thing is there's a desire formed. Okay, there's a desire that is born that makes you want to seek out that object and make you want to possess that object. Now, desires by themselves, we don't say they are bad. We said binding desires are bad. And these binding desires, any binding desire has two children. Okay, the first one, Om, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. So there was a power fluctuation. I was just checking the internet. All right. So binding desires have two children. The first is greed. Okay. So desire begets greed and greed begets more desire. A desire is never sated by fulfilling it. Okay. It is like fire. The more you feed the fire, the more it grows. Desire, by fulfilling it, will never actually, finish that desire or this thing. There is always one more desire, the next desire, next desire. And it's funny, you ask anybody, how much salary do you want? How much money do you want? And everybody always says, just a little more, always. Right? So the desire is endless. It is like a bottomless pit. The more you feed it, it just keeps on going. So one of the children of desire is greed, right? It only leads to more desire. And that is if the desire is fulfilled. Suppose the desire is not fulfilled, then what happens? Krodha. Okay, Krodha means anger. There is anger or emotional disturbance born out of an unfulfilled desire. So when you have a desire and it doesn't get fulfilled, you get upset, right? So that is Krodha, anger. Then he says, Krodhat bhavati sammoha. From this anger is born delusion. Then sammohat smriti vibramaha. From the delusion, there is loss of memory. Loss of memory means that you forget who you are, who is the other person, what are my surroundings. There is a temporary state of madness, right? And smriti bhramshat buddhi nashaha. When there is no memory, then the intellect ceases to function. The intellect is not available to you, right? Then buddhi nashat pranashyati. And in this state, pranashyati, he says, man is as if destroyed. It may not be an actual physical destruction, but that element of humanity that separates human beings from beasts, that element is gone. Okay, and then there is no difference between man and beast. That is the idea. The main separating element between a human being and an animal is this intellect, right? And when this intellect is not available, man is as good as a beast. And this progression might you may have questions about it, but let's take an example. I'm sure you've all seen movies about drug addicts, right? Drugs and addiction and maybe even like rehabilitation. So I'm sure you've all seen some movie or you're aware of it somehow. So let's take that example because it's very easy to relate. So what happens? We'll start at the desire for the drug, right? There's a desire for the drug. And, by suppose he gets the drug. Do you think the addiction is over? No, it grows, right? The more drug he gets, the more drug he wants. And that becomes his obsession. All the time he's thinking, how can I get more drugs, right? So there is a binding desire there. And suppose by chance he's not able to get the drug, what happens? There is anger. There is intense anger, sometimes even violent anger. Then what happens from this anger? There is delusion. He has forgotten his priorities. His priorities should be to take care of himself, of his surroundings, of his family, all of that. But at that moment, the priority is to acquire the drug. So there is delusion. There is a shift in the priorities, and there is a clear lack of understanding, right? And so this is called delusion, a clouded mind. And from this clouded mind, what happens? There is loss of memory. This addict forgets himself, forgets his surroundings. And addicts have been known to hurt their own family members. They've been known to steal money from their own family, right? And how does this happen? Loss of memory. When you forget your own surroundings and everything around you, then this happens. And in this forgetting this memory, loss of intellect. He's not able to differentiate between right and wrong, right? Hurting somebody is wrong. Stealing from somebody is wrong. This clarity goes away. And then buddhi nashat pranashyati. There is a kind of a destruction. Now this seems like a very extreme and far-fetched example, but it's it's very harsh to say this, but we are all like that. Okay? The only thing is that the drug addict's substance of choice is illegal and our substance of choice is legal, but the pathology remains the same. Okay, if you have a teenage kid at home and you are a parent and the teenager wants some expensive phone and suppose you say no, what happens? He's angry. From that anger, there is delusion. From delusion, he forgets that you are the parent, he is the child. This is the relationship, he forgets. And what happens? Loss of intellect. And then he says hurtful things, right? And thinks he will do something that he might regret later, right? So this pathology remains the same, whatever be the substance. And so this progression from emotions to the intellect, how emotions impact the intellect is given very...
Just hold it.
Sorry, is there a question?
No, sorry.
Okay, so I've muted everyone. So there is a clear-cut pathology, clear-cut progression from how emotions, lead to loss of intellect and loss of that being human status. Okay, now, if there is no intellectual health, how can there be a study of Vedanta? How can there be Viveka, Vairagya, all these things, right? So then how can there be a spiritual journey? And where did it all start? Shamaha, peace of mind, right? So this is the idea behind Shamaha. This peace of mind becomes very important for your spiritual journey. If even one of these are not there, physical health is not there, mental health is not there, intellectual health is not there, then this Vedantic journey becomes a challenge. So this is Shamaha, mental restraint or discipline of thoughts. Any questions?
Om Medha. Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here you said hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, please go on.
You said like the intellectual mind is important, not the emotional, because it will lead to all that not being emotional. But the bhakti yoga is they say more on the emotional part, right? Like you need to be more loving, caring, compassion. That is an emotion. I always have this doubt. Suppose when we have a situation of like somebody is begging, and do we need to apply the intellectual thing that the person is fit and fine, can work, not give money, or emotional part? I don't know the situation. Like you should just how do we decide like when to use the emotion, when to use the intellect?
There's no decision when to use emotion, when to use intellect. Always you should use intellect. Emotions, and like we said, it will never go away. Okay, it's not something you can get rid of, but you can keep the emotions healthy. That keeping emotions healthy is what we call bhakti. Bhakti is always backed by intellect. Otherwise, you become a fanatic, right? Nobody likes fanatics, right? So this is the idea that intellect is, stronger, or every emotion that you have is checked by the intellect and then only retained. Every emotion that you have. And this is not easy, okay? Emotions are very tough to manage. They're very turbulent, they're very strong, and sometimes they're stronger than the intellect. And that is why so many sadhanas and practices have been given. All the Hatha Yoga practices, all the Vedic rituals, all any text you take, any practice that is given, it is for this reason only, to lessen the hold of emotions on you, so that the intellect can function. If you take the case of the beggar, and what you asked, it does trigger some emotion, but the intellect must also be functioning there. Okay, you must ask the question that we all know a lot about the begging industry in India. It's an industry only, right? It's they're using milking people's
Yes.
sympathy to for their own profits, right? Knowing this, and you have this feeling that you want to help somebody, that emotion is there. What can you do? You can intelligently redirect it. Redirect that charity towards a trusted source, right? Somebody will actually get some benefit out of it. So most of the beggars on the road, the money goes in, it is used for something wrong most of the time. So if really you need to help, if really there is a need for charity, then you can take a different approach. Help your maid with, her children's education. Help or tie up with some organization that is trustworthy. So these kind of things. And this is not my personal opinion. This is something told by Shankaracharya himself in one of the later parts. He says, even for charity, there are rules. There must be a time, there must be a place, and there must be a worthy receiver, and there must be a correct attitude with which it is done. So there are rules laid down even for charity, which means what? Even for emotion, this is backed by intellect. So there's never a choice between emotion and intellect. It is always intellect. You have to intelligently manage your emotions.
Can I just a comment? It's a very easier said, control your mind. It's the most difficult thing in this world. And only the healthy mind can control its mind. If you're not in a state of accepting it, or like I've seen so many patients of depression, it's not under their control. Maybe it is their very bad childhood which has made them like this. So everybody cannot control mind.
Yes, I agree with you. When it comes to depression, a lot of people have this idea that oh, they're just sad, let them get over it, kind of thing. But actually, it's a disorder. That's why it comes under the psychiatric, umbrella, right?
Yeah.
And so there are steps that you take to overcome that.
Yeah, that is a disease. Yeah, that is a disease itself.
That's a disease. So it comes under a different purview. First, there must be recovery using, allopathic or whatever kind of means. And once that so-called normal mental state is reached, then we can talk about all of these. Then we can talk about bringing emotions under control.
Thank you.
It's the same as the physical disease, when there is physical disease also, first there must be recovery, then only you can talk about spiritual progress.
Yes.
And this is almost the same thing, just the mind as the organ that is affected. That's all. Okay, so any more questions?
I have one related to what the other ma'am also asked about the charity. So sometimes we just give, like, especially for people on the road, because it's little money, maybe we don't think that much and we just give. So is the intent more important, or is sort of whom I'm giving to, and considering all of that more important? If my intent is just to help, and I give it just because I have, and I just think of it as I have enough, so let me just give, and maybe that money holds more value for that person. Is the intent mattering, or maybe that person is utilizing it for something wrong? Does that matter more? Like, how do we?
So when you come to the law of karma, you will see that intent is the main thing. Okay, it is not the action itself, it is the intent with which you do any action. And so in that case, your intent is pure. You want to help somebody, right? So in that case, there will not be a problem for you in the sense that if that person uses that money for something illegal or something bad, there is no papam for you. Okay. But when you study further and Shankaracharya lays down a lot of guidelines for all these kind of different activities, especially charity also, and he gives guidelines. And if you follow these guidelines, it's not like you must follow, but if you follow, it is a more effective way, more efficient way of doing the same thing. So that giving a beggar some 10 rupees is a very small contribution, and it's okay, it's not wrong, but there can be a better way to do the same thing. That is the idea. And for you, there is no, there's nothing harmful as such, but this, once you become aware, once you are taught all these things, then it's better to implement.
Thank you.
Okay. So we have finished Shamaha. And now we'll move to the next one. And let's read this. You can unmute yourself. Damakaha.
Damakaha.
Chakshuradi.
Chakshuradi.
Bahendriya.
Bahendriya.
Nigraha.
Nigraha.
Okay. So the student has gone to the second one and he asked the question, Damakaha. What is Damaha? And the teacher has given the answer, Chakshuradi Bahendriya Nigraha. Nigraha, we saw Mano Nigraha. Here again Nigraha, it means control or restraint. Here, what is being controlled now? He says, Indriya Nigraha. Indriya refers to the organs. And which organs are these? He says, Chakshu, Adi. Chakshu is the eyes, Adi is etc. So he says, eyes, etc. organs, restraint. And he calls them Bahyendriya. Bahya means external, right? So these are your external organs. So in Viveka Chudamani, there Shankaracharya clarifies that he's talking about the organs of action as well as the sense organs. Okay, so 10 organs in total. But here the author has not clarified so much. He has just said Chakshuradi, sense organs. Okay, eyes, etc. Now, which are your sense organs? There are 5 of them.
If eyes, nose, skin, and ears, and touch, tongue, taste.
Right, so the 5 organs are common knowledge, familiar to us. So he says Chakshuradi Bahyendriya, external organs. Why is there a need to clarify external organs? Because sometimes the mind is called as the 6th Indriya. Okay, and since we have already talked about mind in Manaha, in Shamaha as Mano Nigraha, here he has clarified that here he is talking only about the external organs. And he says eyes, etc. These external organs, controlling or restraining them, that is called damaha. Now, it's very important to understand what this word nigraha means. Okay, nigraha does not mean control in the sense of suppression. It is not suppression of the sense organs. However, it is intelligent redirection of the sense organs, channelizing and intelligently showing them some new direction. That is called dhamma. Okay. Now, suppression is actually a dangerous thing, right? Initially, it feels like you're succeeding, but eventually there will be an explosion and it is going to have some unpleasant consequences. So suppression must never be done. Vedanta never asks you to suppress, be it your senses, be it your emotions, be it your desires, be it your thoughts, okay? Or anything. There should be no suppression. Why? Because it leads to a lot of friction and internal friction, and eventually it leads to an explosion, which is going to be, well, kind of dangerous. So this damaha refers to intelligently directing the sense organs. Now it is not possible to shut down the sense organs, right? Once you are awake, it's not possible to sit like this, right? It's not possible to close your eyes, ears, everything and sit in a cave. We live in the society, and certain things have to be done, and for that the sense organs have to be active, awake. And when they are active and awake, you cannot really control their operation. You cannot say stop. You cannot tell your ears stop listening. As long as the ears are open, sound will fall on it. Right? So this suppression, this shutting down of senses, this is not possible, nor is it recommended. So then what? Okay. So for this, we can use the example of building a dam on a river. Right? There is a river and it's going with full flow. So what do? We build a dam, and then we build channels, and we intelligently direct the water where we want it to go, to the farms or to whatever. Right? So the same thing must be done with the sense organs. It's not possible to shut it down. Just like how it is impossible to stop the flow of the river, eventually there's going to be a problem. In the same way, it's not possible to shut down the senses. So what should you do? You must redirect intelligently. So instead of listening to things that disturb you, like very agitating music, or even the news these days, constantly following the news 24/7 has an effect of disturbing you. So what can you do? You can redirect your eyes and ears towards something more pleasant. You cannot shut down your eyes and ears, but you can pick up a book or whatever that is more pleasant for you. So this is basically disciplining the sense organs using will, using conscious effort. It is not an external imposition, nor is it suppression. It is using willpower, using conscious effort, deliberate effort. You are working with the organs to just change their direction. Now the question comes, why is damaha necessary? Any idea why it is necessary to manage the sense organs?
For the channelization of positive energy, or to channelize it into useful things.
Okay. The answer is very simple actually.
Okay.
Because the sense organs control the mind. Yeah.
Sorry? Can you?
Because the sense organs control the mind.
They don't control the mind, but they do influence the mind.
Yes.
They're the gateway of information.
Absolutely. So they're the gateways, right? And because of this, they have a direct impact on the mind. They have the potential to disturb your shamaha, right? Damaha has a direct impact on shamaha. And so it becomes necessary to manage the sense organs in order to protect the peace of mind. And why is peace of mind important? For the Vedantic study. Without peace of mind, Vedantic study becomes very difficult. So Shamaha, protects Damaha and Damaha protects Shamaha, and Shamaha is required for the study. So this is the idea. And if Shamaha, if the mind control is strong enough, then actually Damaha becomes unnecessary, right? If your mind is so strong that it will not be disturbed, then it doesn't matter what kind of input falls on the senses. The mind is still unaffected. But generally, Shamaha is very difficult, as we discussed. It is quite challenging to manage the mind, but it is much easier to manage your sense organs. Right? It is easier to remove yourself from a disturbing situation than to tell your mind to ignore it. Right? So this is Damaha, and basically we are avoiding the extrovertedness of the sense organs, and instead we are directing them intelligently. Okay. Any questions?
Purpose of Damaha? Why do we need Damaha?
You need Damaha for Shamaha, because these sense organs have the capacity to disturb the mind.
Okay.
And you need Shamaha for the Vedantic study. That is the flow. Okay. Any questions? So basically in Damaha, you must govern the sense organs and not let them govern you. Okay, that is the understanding. So with this, we'll stop, and next class we will continue with the rest of them. Any questions about whatever we discussed today? Yes.
I wanted to know whether Shamaha is the result of Damaha.
No, it's not. Not exactly the result, but however, Damaha has the tendency to. It could disturb the mental peace, but just because you close off. For example, there are many people who go to the Himalayan caves and they think, let me meditate there. But even though the senses are kind of shut off, still the mind is agitated, right? So it does not cause in that sense, because the mind can be agitated even without sensory input. But sensory input, however, can further that agitation. So that is why Dhamma becomes important.
Thank you.
Medha ji, I had a question.
Yeah.
So you said that the sense, you have to control or redirect the sense organs. So are we talking about the organs of action also in this Dhammaha?
So in Tattvabodha, the author does not mention whether he's including organs of action, but in Viveka Chudamani, Shankaracharya, for the same Dhammaha, he says Ubhayor, means both groups. And there it means the organs of action and as well as the sense organs. So you can take it as both.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, then we can end for today, and we will meet again next week and continue with the rest of the Shat Sampati. We'll end with Purnamada. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Om Namah Shivaya. Thank you, everybody. See you next
Thank
week.
you, Medha ji.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Medha.
Thank you.
Yeah, have a good day.
Thank you, Medha.
Thank you.